Okay, Chapter 19, Java Order Cost Accounting. Chapter 20 will be the process cost accounting. So let's start with there. Job costing. It's used for production of large, unique, or high-cost items. And it's usually built to order rather than mass-produced. So built to order is like usually customized. And many of these costs can be directly traced to each individual job. So the key there is individual jobs, I think. Again, typical job order cost applications like special order, building construction. These are unique, customized, individualized type products that the shop is making. But it's also in the service industry, for instance, law firms, that particular client as an example. Your job order events, you receive an order, usually it's not even an order, it's a bid, and then you got to predict the cost to complete the job. So you usually have to put in a competitive bid, and then you negotiate the sales price, or you get the order, and then you got to schedule the work. So what you studied in Chapter 18, you're going to see these three things over and over and over again. So hopefully you have these under somewhat understanding. That's going to be your direct materials, your direct labor, and then your other costs, which are going to be grouped into factory overhead. And then you're going to allocate those into goods in process. And once they're finished goods, and once you sell them, it's the cost of goods sold. So the primary document is the job cost sheet, and it's usually to track each individual specific project. And you're going to track, again, your direct materials that you're pulling out of your warehouse, your direct labor. Again, this direct labor is the actual wages or people working on this particular project. And then you have a variety of other overheads that you're going to group into factory overhead, or other costs that you're going to group into factory overhead. And then you sum it up. So it starts with the materials requisition. And this is usually like you go to your warehouse and you ask for these materials, and they then take it out of the warehouse, and they then debit it into your job. And it usually requires a couple different signatures. And this is the tracking system that the computer systems use. And it'll be to the job number and proper authorization, how many, and so forth. Again, you go back into your source documentation, and you keep tracking the variety of units that you're taking out of the warehouse, or different materials, and putting it in there. That's what the materials ledger card for. It's typically multiple materials. I mean, think of a bicycle. You have maybe the handlebars, the seat, the frame, the sprocket, whatever, the chain and so forth. So, and then you're going to get into the job cost. So here's your direct materials, obviously, and the next thing you track is how many hours is someone working on it. And so you do this through the time ticket. And a lot of times this can be like, for instance, law firms, they'll be tracking individual, like your phone call. What client is that billed to? And that's what these computer systems or manual systems track. Again, no different than the materials, only now you're just tracking different people's and their rate and amount of time. For instance, in a law firm, it could be the attorney, it could be an assistant, it could be a legal clerk, and so forth, tracking these, and then you would track that to that particular job. Factory overhead is a different animal. You've got to allocate manufacturing overhead. using a predetermined overhead rate. So what they're saying is you actually don't know exactly what your overhead costs are virtually until the end of the year. So you have to estimate that. And your estimate will be based on some predetermined rate. So let's get into this. And here they're doing 60% of maybe of the materials, or 106%, or here of direct labor. So it's usually going to be reflected of like how much time is spent or how much materials and so forth. And that will be customized to each company, to each kind of project they're working on. So there's no uniform predetermined overhead rate. Get used to this predetermined overhead rate. This is going to be a constant for the rest of this class. And so what you're really doing is you're estimating your total manufacturing overhead for the coming period. That could be for like the year. And then you're going to divide it by how much you think your estimated direct labor cost is for that period. So if you think you're going to have an overhead, as an example, of $200,000, and you're going to have direct labor costs of $125,000, and your labor cost is the driver, then you're simply going to divide that out to get you a number that you're going to now plug forward in your future estimates and bids. And it is important that this estimate be as accurate as possible, because it could affect your sales. You have to bid accurately. And so the management's going to constantly adjust this throughout the year, this overhead rate, as they dial it in to more exactly. So we're going to summarize. Again, you're just taking your materials requisitions, your job cost, your timesheets, and then you're going to put it into factory overhead, maybe indirect materials, as well as some other things that could be their maintenance, as an example. Indirect labor, again, could be like maintenance as an example of that. And so here's your debit and credit. You got your raw material purchases. They take it out of the warehouse and they then put it into goods in process, which later on we'll get into and then your factory overhead. And your indirect material is charged to this. So there's a flow of different things. The direct material is just going to go strictly directly. You can track that, and this will be put into the overhead costs. And you're going to readjust this as time goes by. Same with the direct labor, and then indirect labor goes to factory overhead. So direct materials, direct labor, you can track specifically, and then your indirect is going to be part of your factory overhead. So you're going to have actual factory overhead and then applied. So this is what you were estimating, and then an adjustment needs to be made, because they're never going to estimate exactly. So here's a summary. Again, the cost of goods manufactured, cost of goods sold, as you take it out. So you're taking it out of your direct material, direct labor overhead, and you're transferring it to your goods in process, transfers to finished goods, and transfers to cost of goods sold. So overhead application. This is the challenge for this chapter, and if you get it down, this chapter will be easier in the later chapters. Reasons for using the predetermined overhead. Again, overhead is not incurred uniformly during the year. Actual overhead might vary from month to month, and the predetermined rate makes it possible to estimate job costs sooner, because there's always a period of unknown, and again, you just try to get it as close as possible. Let me stop there, and I will start with the new video.